All have been admitted.
Oh, Viveki, you're here? Good.
Yes.
Nice.
Great.
So,
Tell me.
just before we begin, I would just like everyone to know that if you have your Instagram profiles, if you have your Instagram page, please follow Adhyayan. Gauri's putting up the Instagram handle. We have some fun activities for you to do during the workshop on the Instagram page. So if you could follow Adhyayan on Instagram, it'll be amazing. Thank you.
Hi, Tasneem. Welcome.
Yeah, Nita, we could begin.
Yeah, I think we need to begin. Yeah.
Okay. Would you like me to introduce myself to everybody and then begin?
Yeah.
So, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much. I was not expecting so many people to be here, to be honest. I am overjoyed because people who love reading, who are interested in reading, that really warms my heart. And that is why I do what I do. My name is Nita Row, and I work with Adhyayan Foundation, which is a sister organization of Adhyayan Quality Education Services. We work with government schools. And I will be telling you a little bit about the work we do in government schools and Gram Panchayat libraries a little later. But reading aloud is something that I've been doing for a while, and it's something that I personally have seen work like magic. And that is why the session is titled The Art and Magic of the Read Aloud. Now, fortunately for everybody, the art is something that is very easy to master. And if this webinar or session convinces you that you would like to read aloud, we are following this up with 4 sessions, which Viveki will, I think, tell you about later, where you will be taught the art of the read aloud. Today, let's go into the magic of the read aloud. Just give me a moment. I'll move things around so that I can see my, yeah. So before I begin, I just want all of you to type in the chat very quickly, or even unmute a few of you to describe what is your favorite memory of being read to as a child. Was there somebody who read to you? Was there somebody who made books come alive for you? It could have been a teacher, a relative, a parent. That's great to know. I am originally, at least my family is from Karachi, so I'm thrilled that you're here. Yeah, and yes, definitely you could join the other sessions where we'll be going deeper into that. Your mother read to you, Jayashree?
Yeah.
Yes. My family was from Karachi, so this is like, wow. I have many. I really, that's one place I really want to visit, Pakistan. Anyone else besides Jayashree? Any memories of being read to? Don't be shy. Just unmute yourself and talk.
Recently, I participated in one one workshop in which, as a learning experience, the facilitator read a story, a picture story, and it was very even the all the adults in the room, everybody was enjoying. It's not like the photographs from the story, the animation, and everything, the words, they were having an impact on everyone.
Yes, in fact, that's something I normally do as well. And if there's time at the end, depending on how much time there is, I might just read to all of you and give you a glimpse of what it is like. Your mom read to you. That's nice. I'm so glad to hear that. In my own case, actually, I don't really have memories of being read to as a child. I loved books. I was attracted to them almost naturally, but there was nobody around me except my mama, my uncle, who, used to buy me a lot of books. I used to get a lot of books as prizes at school, and they were my most prized possessions. But I don't really remember as a child anybody reading anything to me except from whatever was in the textbook. However, when I was older, I went to a school in Baghdad called Baghdad International School. And there we had this English literature teacher. I still remember her so well. Her name was Anne Orphaly. She was an English woman, and she would read Shakespeare to us. Now, many people develop an aversion for Shakespeare because the language is so different from what we use. And it's sometimes hard to get the references in the text. But the way Mrs. Orphaly read Shakespeare to us, I could close my eyes and imagine everything that she was talking about. And that kind of mesmerized me. And I began to understand the text so much better as a result. And mind you, I was in the 11th grade at this time. I wasn't a young child. In other classes, normally teachers made us read. And very often one switched off because not everybody read with that kind of fluency. But hearing Mrs. Orphaly read, it was just magical. And later on, when I became the head of primary school at Bombay International School, I made it a point to read to all our students every week. So I used to have these assemblies where I'd pick picture books for our kids and I would read to them. I would go to the pre-primary and read to them as well. In fact, right through COVID, I read to the students. And, just yesterday, I mean, this is just a sidebar, but just yesterday I visited BIS and I met a mother of a child who's now in first grade. And she said, do you know that my son still remembers how you used to read to him? That was his favorite time of the day. And those words really warmed my heart because that's what we want, don't we? We want children to love books and love reading. And I have to tell you that at BIS, there was not a child who would say, I don't like to read. They love to listen to stories. They would come into my office and have me read to them. It was just something. They would discuss books with me. They would share books with me and say, Miss, this is something that I'm reading, and give me copies and say, you must read it. Or they would come and tell me that we don't have this book in the library. Can you convince the librarian to bring this series into the library? And we were talking books and stories all the time. Reading changed my life. Reading changes your life. Reading unlocks worlds unknown or forgotten, taking travelers around the world and through time. Reading helps you escape the confines of school and pursue your own education. Through characters, the saints and the sinners, real or imagined, reading shows you how to be a better human being. This is a quote by a famous author. She's a middle school teacher called Donalyn Miller, and her book is called The Book Whisperer. I'm currently reading another one of her books, which is called The Joy of Reading. In fact, I'm listening to it. It's an audiobook, and she reads beautifully. And she, Panilla Rip, these are people that I have admired because they have really inspired me to create this reading culture in at the school that I was in, and now in the work that I'm doing. Many of you might be familiar with the work of Rudine Sims Bishop. She had written this seminal essay in which she spoke about how books are mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. Could anyone tell me what does she mean when she says books are mirrors? Anyone? I mean, don't, please, the more participative we make this, the better it is. Otherwise, it'll just be me speaking today. And that's not fun.
If you can relate with the thing which you are reading right now, that is actually when you call the books as
mirrors. So, growing up, we've all grown. I don't know about you because you must be much younger than I am, but even so, the majority of the books we read and we find on library shelves or in bookshops are books written by authors who come from countries that are distant from ours, and usually the West. We very fortunately, in the last few years, there has been a spurt of Indian authors for children, which is so amazing because finally children are able to see themselves in books. Otherwise, it was always talks of, somebody in England with blonde hair and blue eyes. And, you might have listened to Chimamanda Adichie's TED Talk about the danger of a single story. It's all about how, because we only see certain people in books, we think of them as better than us. And we always had, I mean, it's a well-known fact that many of us Indians have a complex about our skin color and our intelligence because we are not white and blue-eyed. And that's what the world has kind of reinforced, unfortunately. But I'm glad that children today can see themselves in books. And that's something that we must continue showing them, using Indian literature, well-written Indian literature. Books are also windows. Someone else, maybe? Hussein, sorry, you've got your hand up. You wanted to come.
So I was about the mirrors. So it's the mirror for the society, what is happening.
Also.
So it reflects some reality, some problems, some challenges, or some solutions, some real stories.
Absolutely. That's another interpretation which is also very valid. In the case of Rudine Sims Bishop, of course, she was talking about Black American children not being represented enough in, literature in the US. But yes, the same goes for all of us. And yes, books can also be a mirror of society. Books are also windows. Would somebody like to comment on that? How are they windows?
I guess books are windows because they help you to see another world by itself. Like
Absolutely.
For my daughter, she loves reading books and she enjoys it a lot. And she goes in that world for days. Just, a simple story about one of the Karari Tales story was there, which is about a book and a song. Sorry, a story and a song. That's the name of the book. And then she actually went to Mama, does lights come out from all the houses, and does it go towards the temple? So she used to spend a lot of time looking, where the lights are going from the houses to and since it was a very village setup and we stay in a small town, she was very interested, to know what is happening. Each time she reads book, her imagination grows up. She comes up with such fantastic ideas that me as a parent, sometimes I have to, reach out to her, and I get a lot of explanation of things from her.
Yeah.
And a simple thing like, she, now I don't know, she got a gift which the entire Frozen movie is in a book, part 1 and part 2. So she reads that, and then her biggest question is why she has brown hair while Elsa has got silver blonde hair, and she's like, that's all the different ideas that they come. So I feel that when we say that books are windows to the world, it's the window to another world by themselves, their imaginations, the way they see things. And each time I question her, I am very much pleasantly surprised that she comes up with such simple answers to some of the very questions that I ask her.
Totally. So well said. And sometimes we not only get a glimpse of the outer world, we sometimes can step into another world and lose ourselves in that world. Hasn't that happened to some of us when we're reading? Books can be... Now, this little poster was made by Grant Snyder, based originally on Rudine Sims Bishop's essay, but then he added all these other metaphors for books. They can be stepping stones to greater knowledge. They can be overcoats that keep us warm. They can be anchors when we're really upset. They can be springboards to take us, to further heights. They can be escape hatches when we need to, and quiet corners when we need to shut ourselves from the world. They can be warm blankets, flying carpets, and beacons to new readers. I love this little, poster with all these metaphors in it, because books can be so many different things. And most of all, books are lifelong friends to me. There are 3 secrets. There is this author that you might have heard of, Mem Fox. She's written a number of children's books. She's just amazing. And she describes 3 secrets of reading that you unlock when you expose children to books. The first is the magic of print. So being aware that those squiggles that we see on paper actually make sense. Those are sounds, and those sounds put together make words. Words make sentences and paragraphs and stories. So just exposing them to the magic of print, and then being able to associate print everywhere. They begin to get interested in print everywhere. I remember even as a child, if I even went to a dentist's office or something, I would constantly be looking for things to read, because my eyes had got so attuned to wanting to devour whatever knowledge. In the car, I would be reading hoardings. And today, when you travel with kids, the perpetual cries, I'm bored, I'm bored. And I do not ever remember being bored when I was on a journey. We never had iPods and iPads and things that today's kids have, but they are bored despite all that. Then there is the magic of words. You hear beautiful words in books, so many unfamiliar words. You hear figures of speech, you hear foreign words very often, and you get exposed to the magic of language and words. The third secret of reading, as she calls it, is the magic of knowledge. As you were saying earlier, books can unlock so many secrets of the world. They can tell us, you can find a book about practically anything and everything. So that is why it is really so important that children should unlock these 3 secrets through their reading. In case anybody puts any questions or comments in the chat, and you want me to stop, please, Jayashree Viveki, interrupt me, because I'm not paying attention to the chat.
No issues. Nita, could you also intersperse it with a little bit of Hindi, if that's possible?
For sure.
Yeah.
And in fact, ये मुझे पहले से ही कहना था, और मैं सोच रही थी इसके बारे में कि जब हम रीडिंग के बारे में बात करते हैं, इट्स नॉट ओनली इंग्लिश, वी नीड टू रीड इन डिफरेंट लैंग्वेजेस. कर्नाटका में हमारे प्रोग्राम में हम सब बच्चों के साथ कन्नड़ा, मराठी, उर्दू में पढ़ते हैं किताबें. इन गोवा मराठी, कोंकणी, कभी कभी इंग्लिश भी पढ़ते हैं बच्चे, पर देर इज नो, मतलब बुक्स में कोई ऐसी हायरार्की नहीं है कि इंग्लिश बुक्स ही अच्छे हैं. द ओनली सैड थिंग इज दैट क्वांटिटी वाइज इंग्लिश में जितने बुक्स अवेलेबल हैं वो बाकी लैंग्वेजेस में इतने सारे बुक्स अवेलेबल नहीं हैं. इंग्लिश में इतने सारे बुक्स बनते भी हैं, ट्रांसलेट भी होते हैं. आजकल बहुत सारे पब्लिशर्स जैसे स्टोरी वीवर, दे आर ट्रांसलेटिंग ऑल देयर बुक्स इनटू डिफरेंट इंडियन लैंग्वेजेस एंड इवन मलेशियन भाषा एंड लॉट्स ऑफ डिफरेंट लैंग्वेजेस. तो ये जो रीडिंग का, इट्स नॉट एक्सक्लूसिव टू इंग्लिश. ये भी हमें हर भाषा में पढ़ना चाहिए स्टोरीज. इनफैक्ट मैं हमारी हिंदी और मराठी टीचर्स को भी कहती थी कि आप टेक्स्ट बुक्स तो हाथ ही मत लगाइए, अब बस उनको स्टोरी सुनाइए, सीख जाएंगे बच्चे. पर उनको बस था कि नहीं, जब तक वो व्याकरण नहीं सीखेंगे, सब कुछ रीडिंग के द्वारा सिखाया जा सकता है. ये जो है, दिस इज अ स्टडी दैट हैज बीन डन. ये अमेरिका में की गई थी स्टडी, लेकिन काफी स्टार्टलिंग स्टडी है, काफी शॉकिंग फैक्ट है कि जो बच्चों को हम कभी नहीं पढ़ते हैं, लाइक जिन बच्चों को किताबों से कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं करता है, दे आर नॉट रेड टू, उनकी जो वोकैब्युलरी, और जो बच्चों को हम रोज रोज पढ़ते हैं, देयर इज अ मिलियन वर्ड गैप. मतलब जो बच्चे कैसे सीखते हैं, वो जब लैंग्वेज और वर्ड्स कैसे सीखते हैं, जब उनको बार बार एक्सपोजर होता है उन वर्ड्स का. तो जब वो सुनते नहीं है बुक्स को, लाइक कोई उनको पढ़ के नहीं सुनाता है, सो दे हियर फ्यूअर वर्ड्स, एंड फ्यूअर मतलब 1 million लेस वर्ड्स by age 5. I don't know if any of you had heard of this statistic before, but when I came across it, why is my hand raised? I don't know. Viveki, you can put it down. I think it just picks up on.
I will, but Sheetal
Yes,
has a question or she would like to share something.
Puche, yes.
Yeah, Sheetal. Sheetal, you have raised your hand. Would you like to share something? Sheetal Wagmare. Okay, Nita, you can carry on.
अच्छा, ये जो lines है, these are written in English. I want you to try reading them. How easy is it to read this, and can you make sense of them? कोई पढ़ के सुना सकता है मुझे? ये सब सारे वर्ड्स इंग्लिश में है. बहुत मुश्किल था, राइट? बहुत ही लाइक मुश्किल से हम पढ़ सकते हैं. तो बहुत सारे बच्चे ऐसे हैं जिनके लिए हमारा जो नॉर्मल प्रिंट भी ऐसे ही कुछ दिखता है, उनको कुछ समझ में नहीं आता है और कुछ पढ़ नहीं सकते हैं. उनको, जिन बच्चों को डिसलेक्सिया या कोई ऐसी रीडिंग डिफिकल्टी हो, उनके लिए भी वर्ड्स ऐसे ही दिखते होंगे, या आई मीन अलग अलग से दिखते हैं. वो तारे जमीन पे तो उन्होंने कुछ और बहुत ही like they tried to make it very sensational, but they genuinely have difficulty reading. Okay, अच्छा, अभी जल्दी से मुझे बताइए, what are these words? They are very common words. Try reading them. You've got to, obviously, they're jumbled up. But can you tell me what these words are? Anybody?
One is elephant.
Very good. Anyone else? Any other word?
This is fun, Nita.
Yes, use your heads. I'm not going to just let you sit there and listen to me. Try. काफी common words हैं. ऐसे कोई
This one, eclipse.
eclipse, correct?
Wow. Yeah. Eclipse.
Please.
Ji?
Is it please?
No, this is eclipse.
Eclipse.
Oh, okay,
Eclipse.
sorry.
Eclipse and elephant. Done.
Connection.
No, not quite. You're close, but thoda. Connection.
Okay, this is shin word, Tion.
No, it isn't.
Oh, it
Oh.
isn't. Because when you said connection, I thought maybe it's a word that ends in Tion.
Nahi.
Okay.
Try again. Try again. Upar wala.
Migration. Is it
Upar wala is
migration?
a Tion word. Migration. Very good.
Migration,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Migration. और अभी last ये वाला. चलो चलो.
Continent.
Excellent. Drum roll for you. Continent. बहुत ही अच्छा. Right? Now, this you had quite a lot of difficulty reading. But read this. And I don't think anybody will have any
Yeah.
problems reading this.
Yeah.
So can someone volunteer to read this out?
Yes, ma'am. Can I?
Please go ahead.
According to a researcher at Cambridge, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and the last letter be at the right place. The
Rest.
rest can be a total mess, and you can still read it without problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole.
Exactly. Now you are a fluent reader. So for you, this was almost effortless. है ना? क्योंकि आपको पता था कि हाँ, this will be according. Now, अगर वो जो previous slide में हम वैसे करते थे ना, तो you would not have had so much difficulty reading migration, continent, etc. When you're a fluent reader, आपके लिए कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है कि you can make your mind is so amazing. In fact, there's this separate deck I have completely on how we read, which is based on the research of Dr. Marianne Wolf. That microseconds में हमारा जो दिमाग है, it is such a miracle. ये जो reading process है, it is such a miraculous, magical process. हम इसको पूरा पूरी तरह से we take it for granted कि ठीक है ना, हम सब सीख गए कैसे पढ़ने को, पर बच्चों के लिए इतना इजी नहीं है ये. Now this one, I have not jumbled any letters. Abhi this, somebody read to me and tell me the meaning of this. All the words are almost like things that you have dealt with. But anybody read it and tell me if you've understood anything. Now, this is the last trick, I promise. Any volunteers?
May I read it?
Please, please.
The continued existence of art as a coherent concept serves to protect the semiological discourse from difficult problematic posed by the aesthetic. The semiological inability to deal with this aesthetic is paradoxically due to its reliance on the preservation of the value determined category of art.
Okay. Now, I know that you read everything beautifully, but was it easy to understand this at all?
Not at all.
And
No.
you sound like somebody who has a very rich vocabulary in
Thank you.
English. But for even a person who's got a wonderful vocabulary, understanding this, अगर कोई आर्टिस्ट है इस रूम में, मतलब जिसने एक्चुअली आर्ट्स फाइन आर्ट स्टडी किया है, maybe for them something like this would be very easy to understand. I'll give you another example. जब when my son was in 9th grade, वो मुझे अक्सर कहता था, read this to me. और मैं he would give me his chemistry book and tell me, read the page to me. And I would be reading the page. मुझे कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा था. It was English. It was written very well. But I just could not understand anything. And I told him that, what is the point of my doing this? I can't understand anything. So he said, don't worry, मुझे सब समझ में आ रहा है. Because he had context. And that is something that is very important, which we don't take into account. So reading, what we just did, abhi, jo हमने किया, हमने पढ़ लिया, we did what was called word calling. We understood a few words along the way, but there were many words that we had no idea about the meaning and that we couldn't even probably explain the gist of that paragraph. क्योंकि हमें context नहीं था. हमने
Nita, Shahida has a question. She
Yes.
raised her hand. Yeah, Shahida.
No, I do not have a question. I would just like to add that my son used to do the same thing when he had a history test on. So he would usually tell me to read the whole chapter to him in a kind of a story kind, and he would only listen to me. And I don't know, but he actually understood, and he was able to, answer the questions after that in his own words, just because he remembered the way I told him. I read the whole thing out to him.
Thank you, Shahida. So that is the thing. कि बहुत बार there are some of us who, when we are listening to things, we can pay attention, and we'll come to that. क्यों वो काफी बच्चों के लिए easy हो जाता है. So reading comprehension के लिए काफी factors हैं. So one is how fluent of a reader are you? आपकी क्योंकि reading में इतनी processes हैं जो चल रही हैं. Not only do you have to read the word on the page, word by word. हमारी जो आंखें हैं, they take chunks of phrases one at a time. Because if you had to read word by word, अब ये महसूस करेंगे, if you're reading in a foreign language or a language that you don't normally read in, you can't do this chunking. हम एक एक अक्षर को जोड़ के we read, just like beginning readers. Maybe if you had to, I don't know, अगर मैं तमिल या कन्नड़ा में सीखूं, actually उर्दू में, when I have to read, I have to look at every letter and put it together, फिर मुझे समझ में आता है. And then मुझे I have to think, अच्छा meaning of course, क्योंकि हिंदी से इतनी मिलती जुलती है, at least grammatically, समझ में आ जाता है. But to read text in Urdu, मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा time लग जाता है. Because attention भी pay करना पड़ता है. You have to hold what you to make meaning of the sentence. You have to keep what you read before in your head. तो बहुत सारे अलग-अलग skills are in process. Then you have to have knowledge of that language and the skills to understand that knowledge. Interest और motivation बहुत बड़ी चीज है. अगर मुझे उर्दू में interest नहीं है तो मैं पढ़ूंगी ही नहीं. And background knowledge, right? This is one set of things. फिर मैं क्यों पढ़ रही हूँ? Am I reading it for enjoyment? Am I reading it for, अगर मैं enjoyment के लिए पढ़ती हूँ तो even if I skip some things, it doesn't matter so much. But usually when we are enjoying a book, we don't want the book to end, and we really हम एक एक लफ्ज का मजा लेते हैं, लुत्फ लेते हैं. But when we have to read for academic purposes or research, we have to do very, very focused. We have to focus very hard. क्योंकि जो भी हम पढ़ रहे हैं, we have to retain that. So that's a different kind of reading. Non-academic learning. Sorry, somebody wants to stop me?
No.
Sorry, I thought I heard somebody. Yeah. And non-academic learning, sometimes we're just reading non-fiction for pleasure because we are interested in the subject. फिर जो है, our socio-cultural context plays a very important part. हमारी जो physical environment है, घर पे, स्कूल में, हमें encourage किया जा रहा है. बहुत बार ना बच्चे जब नॉवेल्स पढ़ते हैं या कुछ फिक्शन पढ़ते हैं, तो उनके पेरेंट्स उनको कहते हैं ये सब मत पढ़ो, ये सब बकवास मत पढ़ो, पढ़ाई करो. हिंदी में इनफैक्ट विवेकी और जयश्री के साथ बात कर रही थी कि हिंदी में जो वर्ड है पढ़ाई या पढ़ना, इट इज सिनोनिमस विथ स्टडी. इट्स नॉट जस्ट रीडिंग बट इट्स ऑल्सो स्टडी. तो ये जो है हमारा एक सोशियो कल्चरल कॉन्टेक्स्ट भी है कि पढ़ना जो है ना, वो पढ़ाई के लिए, वो नॉलेज के लिए, ऐसे प्लेजर के लिए नहीं होना चाहिए. हालांकि नेचुरली ऑफ कोर्स हमारे यहाँ भी बहुत like we have some amazing short fiction writers and things, but generally that is the attitude. Is there support at home for providing the child with a reading environment with books and things like that? That is also so important. Accessibility. अगर बच्चों को कोई difficulty हो, they could be blind, they could be dyslexic, या उनकी language development delayed हो, तो हम उनको audio books या ऐसे कोई alternatives provide कर सकते हैं. नहीं तो उनकी reading life तो बहुत ही barren होगी. And again, जो genre है उसका, मतलब अगर आप fiction में भी लीजिए तो you have चेतन भगत and then you have उम्बेर्तो एको. तो बहुत ही चेतन भगत के बुक्स इतने लाइट हैं. उम्बेर्तो एको जो है, his books are so heavy and complex that even people with excellent language skills will struggle to understand them. So all these things play a very important role in how much we comprehend from the book. Now, why is reading aloud one of the most effective ways to draw children to books and becoming active and engaged readers themselves? आप ये statement को पढ़ के मुझे आप बताइए that why do you feel reading aloud is different? Why should we read aloud to children? आपकी क्या राय है?
Yes, Mahesh.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Mahesh.
First of all, I just want to uh, uh, just give the context with respect to earlier side, and if you allow me, and then I can answer this question. Uh, Actually, these sessions recollect me the days of my school days. And basically, my previous experience, I was a language teacher. And in our school, there was used to come different volunteers from different organizations. So one of the volunteers, am I audible?
Yes.
So one of the volunteers is from UK, from one of the organization, and he was taking same reading skill. And I saw there was a passage where a number of the passage is a composition of maximum number. So I didn't get it. I asked him, ये passage आपने क्यों लिया? I asked him. So he said, this child is struggling with words. but he is more interested in math, and he's very confident in math. So I select a passage, so at least he slowly develops the interest towards reading. So he's starting with numbers. So I totally agree, Nita. As you said, so at initial stage, to develop the interest, to enhance the reading skill is very important. And reading aloud, as a language teacher, I can connect this. I started my journey with lower grade, a language teacher. तो एट लोअर के ग्रेड में बच्चे को क्या पढ़ना है, क्यों पढ़ना है, इट्स फॉर हिम हिज टीचर इज अ रोल मॉडल. So when we read aloud, or we are showing him the book, we are discussing with that story. We try to connect that child with the story. So slowly he also gets that confidence, and he also try to. Sometimes they just mumbling. मतलब मैंने देखा है फर्स्ट स्टैंडर्ड के बच्चे कुछ भी नहीं, लेकिन वो फिंगर खाली. बट to push the reading skill, it is very important that reading aloud is one of the key elements.
Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing. Mahesh, would you like to say something?
No. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Nita.
So, जैसे महेश ने कहा, जब बच्चे, when we read aloud to children, they can hear the words as they are meant to be said. If we read with expression, अगर हम सही तरह read aloud करते हैं, तो बच्चे जो है comprehension पे focus कर सकते हैं, और जो struggle है ना उनका, decoding the word और vocabulary से, that gets freed. Because very, मैंने ये experiment भी किया था अपने students के साथ. I would read them a poem ऐसे ही एकदम सादी तरह से, like without any expression, और फिर वही poem मैं उनको expression के साथ पढ़ के सुनाती थी, और मैं उनसे पूछती थी, second time जब मैंने सुनाई आपको ये poem, wasn't the meaning so clear to you? And that is why the children loved it when I read aloud to them, because it freed them from they could focus on the meaning, and they could really get into the story or the poem or whatever it was that I was reading to them. And that made a huge difference. And it's not just young children who have this problem. You will find, honestly, I mean, मैं आपको मैं ये जो workshops करती हूँ read aloud पे, मैं adults के साथ करती हूँ, और मैंने देखा कि काफी सारे जो adults भी हैं ना, वो struggle करते हैं reading करने के लिए, because they have never been encouraged to read with expression. वो जो techniques use करते हैं ना हम बच्चों को, like breaking up words and using certain strategies to decode well, वो use नहीं की हैं. So even if it is in their own language, they really struggle. I know that
Nita?
Shaida has raised her hand.
Yeah, Shaida has raised her hand. And Nita, just for time check, we have 10 minutes to 5:30. Yeah.
So one is that I think, I'm not sure, but I think we might overshoot a little bit. I wasn't planning on it, but because this has been a fairly interactive session where we've been talking, so can we keep the questions for the end, or if you could put them in the chat, that would be great. Just in the interest of time, I'm really sorry. So, this read aloud, sometimes people think कि जब मैं actually even when we go to the government, they say read aloud मतलब बच्चे read aloud करेंगे, जो मतलब in Kannada it's called gatti odu, meaning reading loudly. But वो नहीं है. It's actually a whole pedagogical strategy जहाँ पे teacher or whoever it is, actually the person who's reading reads with expression, changes in pitch, tone, volume, makes eye contact with the children, interactive karte hain, because you ask questions, you make it completely interactive. You don't just read, and the child really enjoys the books. So there are several benefits. One is it develops, I wanted to make this part, more a discussion, but in the interest of time, again, I'm just going to race through this so that we can actually have some questions at the end. It develops all those very important foundational literacy skills like print awareness, print motivation, phonological awareness, phonemic awareness. All those things are developed through the read aloud because you hear rhyme, rhythm, alliteration, all that gets, and vocabulary, of course. That's another very important skill that children acquire. उनकी जो शब्दकोश है वो बढ़ती है because books tend to use many more unfamiliar words than we do in spoken language. Again, interesting fact, जब हम when we are talking, when we are speaking, even very, unless you're Shashi Tharoor who uses very rare words even in normal everyday speech, most of us use about 1,500 words to talk. Bas 1,500 words only. But books have got 3 times as many words. Even simple picture books will use much better, much more interesting vocabulary, जो हम daily speech में कभी use नहीं करते हैं, like rarely use करते हैं. It helps us build great communication skills because we learn how to retell, narrate, and read with expression. हमारी जो listening skills हैं वो improve होती हैं because we have to focus on the meaning. By making the read aloud interactive and asking students questions in between, you improve their thinking skills like prediction, in making inferences. ये सारी skills develop होती हैं. जैसे हमने पहले कहा, हमारी जो imagination है और ये दुनिया के बारे में, like we learn so much through reading. बहुत books में through books we can develop empathy, social skills, socio-emotional skills. Also, things like regulation, self-regulation, concentration, focus. बहुत सारी skills develop होती हैं. Group work and developing, most importantly, जो आप कह रहे थे, I saw one of the questions in the chat. How do I help my child develop an interest in reading? By reading aloud to them. Because when they don't feel that reading is a task जो हम उनसे करवा रहे हैं, when they are struggling, they get so interested. And plus, when we read aloud from a variety of books. We don't just stick to the same genre. हम उनको expose करते हैं, and कोई ना कोई book होगा जो वो बच्चे के like उसकी दिमाग की बत्ती जलेगी, and they'll say, I want to read more of this type of book. So those are the benefits of reading aloud. I mentioned Mem Fox earlier also. उन्होंने कहा है कि reading aloud and talking about what we're reading sharpens children's brains. उनका दिमाग तेज कर देता है, and it helps to develop their ability to concentrate at length, to solve problems logically. क्योंकि हम, when we make it interactive, we ask them, what do you think you would do in that person's place? And to express themselves more easily and clearly. The stories they hear provide them with witty phrases, new sentences, and words of subtle meaning. Jo words like I was saying, we use language in books that we don't normally use in everyday life. So who can read aloud? Parents, बड़े भाई बहन, कोई भी caregiver घर पे जो है, grandparents, कोई auntie, uncle, कोई भी रिश्तेदार, teachers, librarians, volunteers, social workers. In short, कोई भी read aloud कर सकता है. Okay? Who can we read aloud to? Babies and infants. You should start young. They understand so much from books. Toddlers. When they can't read themselves, you must read aloud to them. Children of all ages and even adults. In short, anyone. You can read aloud to any age group. And as they grow older, you don't have to read only picture books. मैंने एक 45-minute class पूरा लिया था, in which I read an entire book to my students of grade 5 And they didn't move from their seats. They didn't even ask, can I drink water? Can I go to the toilet? They were so engrossed in the story. But I've read to even children, I mean, teenagers. My daughter sometimes asks me to read aloud to her, and she's 26. I won't show you this film because, again, we're running out of time, but just an interesting fact, क्यूबा में जो cigars बनाते हैं ना, जहाँ पे जिन factories में, over there also they have somebody called a reader who comes. He's called, I forget the name, but he or she reads aloud to the factory workers as they're making cigars. Literature पढ़ते हैं, newspaper articles पढ़ते हैं, so that इनका जो monotonous work ये जो कर रहे हैं, उनका दिमाग at least active है. So it's a beautiful practice. I'll share the link separately. So some factors that we need to keep in mind that, you know, when we read aloud, ये जो हम ना tendency है कि बहुत बार लोगों की tendency है कि अगर हम पढ़ रहे हैं बच्चों के लिए बुक, तो कोई रामायण या कोई, you know, like moral story या कुछ ऐसा पढ़ें. But choose books initially that are interesting, have colorful illustrations. बच्चों को ऐसा नहीं लगना चाहिए कि they are punished और आपकी बात सुननी ही है उनको. जो space है, we have to make it a safe space, जहाँ पे ऐसा नहीं हो कि, you know, मैं स्कूल की प्रिंसिपल थी, पर जो बच्चे हैं ना, वो मुझे कैसे याद करते हैं कि the teacher who, they think of me as the storyteller. They didn't have any fear of me. जो pictures हैं books में, that is an important. In fact, we'll be doing a whole, if everybody is interested, one session on how to build visual literacy skills through the read aloud. How to use your voice effectively, your face, your body, how to engage the students and children or whoever you're reading to in the read aloud by asking questions. And also, मैं अपनी आवाज बदलती हूँ according to characters, मैं घूमती हूँ, फिरती हूँ, like I become like a child myself and really make the book come alive for kids. So this is what a good read aloud should look like. And I think this is the last slide. Again, this is a quote by Jim Gillies. इन्होंने एक किताब लिखी है, The Read Aloud Handbook. और उसमें वो कहते हैं कि it's not the toys in the house that make the difference in children's lives. It's the words in their heads. The least expensive thing we can give a child outside of a hug turns out to be the most valuable, words. So I urge you all to gift the children in your lives this valuable gift of this priceless gift of words through the read aloud. Phew, I managed to finish a little before time. So if there
But
are...
Nita, there are a couple of questions.
Yes. No, so at least I'm done with the presentation. And if people want to stay on and listen to the answer, like, you know, do a discussion, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, so Bhavna had asked the first question. Bhavna, you want to unmute yourself and speak?
Sorry, can I just interrupt here for a minute? So we'll be putting in the feedback form link. Please fill in the feedback form because you will get a certificate if the feedback form is filled in. So please do not miss out on that. And yeah, we would love to have you around. So please don't leave.
Yeah. So Bhavna, you want to unmute and ask your question? Or should I read it? Okay, so Bhavna asks, for how long should we do a read aloud session for children based on their age? And according to you, what should be the frequency?
Frequency मेरे से मत पूछिए, मैं तो बोलूंगी every day, all the time, मतलब as much time as you have.
So here I would just like to share my personal experience. I have kids. I have 2 kids at home, and we do 8:30 to 9 o'clock read aloud every single day. irrespective of the time, irrespective of the day, we are reading between 8:30 to 9 o'clock. Because that's the time I wind the kids down and get them into bed, tuck them into bed. So as a parent, I do take out that half an hour every single day, and it's generally the same time that I spend. So I follow that routine of time. So between 8:30 and 9 is when we do a read aloud every single day.
But that's what Viveki, बहुत लोग सोचते हैं कि बस, and like you should do that only with very young children, because you're still tucking your children into bed and things like that, which as
Yeah, my
children get older,
daughter's 10.
but
So my
still,
daughter is 10, old enough to read by herself, and she does. Because she through the day she'll pick up her book and read. But at that time is the time when mama reads. Irrespective of the age, it's the time when mama reads. So that's the time, where there's a bonding, there's a social emotional bonding that happens. We discuss a lot of things also often, while we are reading, because there may be something that often comes up, or they ask me the meaning of some words. So it's very interesting to see how, we kind of build on conversations because we read aloud. So I think irrespective of the age of the child, it's great to always read aloud with them, from my experience.
Yeah.
thank you, Viveki. That was music to my ears. आपने question answer कर लिया. तो how long, depending on age, मतलब it depends on the story. Usually picture books are about 32 pages long deliberately because that holds the child's attention. But sometimes you'll be amazed. Even very young children can concentrate for a very long time if they get into the story.
Yeah. So another myth, I think, Nita, is also about, picture books being only for small children, right? You have picture books as well for teenagers and little grown-ups, which are,
So exactly. Matlab, wo same picture book sometimes you can use with very young children at one level,
Yes.
older kids at a completely different level.
Different level,
So
yeah.
there's no, like, picture books are not necessarily for only young children.
Yes, yeah.
In हमारी जो कर्नाटका के libraries में है, even the children who are 14 and 15 are loving the picture books.
Right.
Sorry, Nirmala has her hand up for a while. Nirmala?
Hello, Nita. I wanted to ask you. See, I am working in a very small school for a very small town school, and the kids, our teachers also, they are not exposed to read aloud and having this kind of a culture. We started read aloud very recently, and most of the read aloud, I go and I help them out with it. I wanted your help in how we can help our new teachers to have this culture of read aloud. They read, and it's not the way I would like them to read, because it's just very flat. Are there any ways or some link, or somehow we can help our teachers to read aloud so that the kids find it more interesting? Because what I've seen is whatever books it's just reading it or saying it aloud. But it's, I did show them some of the YouTube read aloud books and all that are there. But then how can I help our teachers in our school to build up this culture of read aloud?
So, Nirmala, since Nita has asked me to take over this, so there are a couple of ways. One is to have about 20 minutes of time where you can sit with your teachers and model the reading. That would be one way. Okay. Introduce them to books that are there in your library that they can probably pick up. Okay. This is not something that's going to happen overnight, probably not something that's going to happen even in 4 months. Maybe there will be a shift in 6 months, which is going to be brilliant. But it's something that you'll have to keep the tempo up. Also, there are a lot of sites like Storyweaver and Epic and other things where you can actually, teachers can actually listen to what good reading looks like. Okay. So maybe you can have some time scheduled in your week where you get them to do this kind of a practice, but because they probably aren't exposed and hence they will not be able to deliver, right? Because they really don't know what it is to, voice modulate and other things. Another way of doing it is using a lot of body movements and actions and getting them to do a little bit of theater within the classroom, which kind of loosens them up. That's what I would, look at, Nita. And Jayashree, if there's anything that you would like to add. So primarily is something that you would need to model, something that you would need to give it time, and something that you could use now that we all have access to the internet. There are a lot of spaces where you will find these kind of videos which your teachers can look at. They could practice with each other before taking it into the classroom. Start with simple books that they could practice with, and they will over time be able to use voice modulation and actions and be able to take this forward within the classroom. But it is something that has to become the part of the culture of the space that you are in.
Yeah, well said,
Thank
Viveki. Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, Shaida.
Actually, Viveki,
Yeah.
I was going to, I passed it to you क्योंकि मैंने सोचा कि you might want to talk about the
the
workshops that are
workshop.
coming
Yeah,
up.
even I was.
Yes, of course, the workshops are coming up. We have put up the workshop details in the feedback form. So it'll be great if you can just click on that link. I think Gauri has put it in the chat and she'll re-put it in the chat if required, because there are a lot of workshops that Nita would be doing for Read Aloud, which are spread over the next 4 months. So if you're keen, if you're interested in knowing how do we use Read Aloud across classes, across age groups, it'll be great if you can be a part of these sessions so that you are kind of in tune with what's happening. And because there is a 1 month gap between two sessions, you could even go back, you could practice it, you could come back, and have your questions, so that we could address that bit too. So the I'll just tell you what the read aloud sessions are. So if you're interested in joining in, you could just click it on in the feedback form itself. So one is how to conduct an interactive read aloud session. The second one in December is using the read aloud to nurture visual literacy. The third one is using read aloud to nurture young writers. The fourth one, which is happening in Feb, is the read aloud as a vehicle for good citizenship. So there are 4 lovely workshops that Nita would be doing with us. So if you're really keen, these are about 1.5, I would say 1.5 to 2 hours. Please, we always say 1.5 hours and then we give a half an hour buffer always. Okay. So generally they're 2 hour sessions. So please, please attend these sessions if you are keen on using these in your classroom and understanding how read alouds can be used. And I think even if you don't use it in the classroom, I think for our personal gains also, many times you if we have little kids at home, if you have children at home, or we're dealing with children also, it's lovely to uh, have these read aloud sessions or something to just inculcate like a practice for ourselves.
But Viveki, even I would say that अगर आपके पास बच्चे भी नहीं हैं, I would still say that you learn how to read
Right.
aloud, because even your own enjoyment of a book, you'll automatically get attuned to listening to the voice of the
Writer.
author and the character. You'll
Yes.
develop that skill unconsciously. Kabhi I pick up a book and I almost am reading in the accent of the person
True.
who
Very
is
true.
the narrator or the it's just something that happens unconsciously.
And it
That
takes you into a
is your own
different world.
enjoyment.
So yeah. Sorry,
Yes, like,
Shahida has been raising a hand. This is the second time Shahida's raised a hand. Yeah, Shahida.
Yes, thank you so much. I've got a few questions. I hope you don't mind.
Go on.
At the moment in the school, we are having our reading program, which is on. And what we teachers are doing is that we have a period where we actually tell a story to the kids, right, in the classroom, or sometimes we take them out to another venue and then, to change their setting and everything. And then after that, we post that story onto the class group. And then after that, they practice the reading of that story and send us back an audio recording. Now, when we do the story, of course, as teachers, we do it in an interesting and, we use all kinds of voices and everything, to make the story interesting. But when we get the recording back, I find that a lot of the kids are still using monotone voices. So how to overcome this?
I'll take that from you. I'll take that if I might, because this is based on my own personal experience. When I was teaching grade 3, we started doing a novel study of Charlotte's Web. And my way of doing, and here is where, reading programs, generally the texts that are used in them, I don't know which one you're using, but tend to be very boring because they are based on decodables and the stories are not really making sense to the kids. I may be wrong here, Shaida, so forgive me.
Yes, actually, we are just telling them stories. We just pick up stories, interesting stories, and tell them the stories. Read
Right.
aloud the stories to them. We don't use any actual, of course, the stories are books, but not the text, not the way that you are saying.
Right. So that's great. But what we started doing, so what would happen in the class would be that I would read for a while, like, maybe for the first few minutes, say 5-10 minutes. And then children would read one by one. It was similar to round robin reading, but we did it with a difference. First of all, we had established some rules in the class that no one will make fun of anybody reading. This is a safe space. We're going to help each other. We are not going to laugh if somebody stumbles over a word or has difficulty reading. The second thing was that I would purposely make mistakes when I was reading. Like, for instance, I would read a line without looking at the punctuation. And then I would say, oops, look at that. I didn't see that there was a question mark here and I read this flat. So I would then reread that sentence the way it's meant to be read. Slowly, with little lessons like this built in without them feeling that they were being taught. By the end of that book, which was about 2 months that we read Charlotte's Web together, all the children in my class, there were 40 of them, were reading beautifully with expression. There's another thing that you can do, which is readers' theater, where children take, there are books that are, or you can convert good stories into theater scripts. And without it being memorized or anything, they read it in the way they take different characters and they read in the class. So that's another very effective way.
Thank you. I'll try your method out in my classroom. Thank you very much.
There's one question, Nita, from Alifia. How can we develop the child's interest in reading if he or she is not interested in the language?
So by selecting, it's always about relationships, getting to know the children, getting to understand their interests. I think Mahesh earlier had spoken about something similar. They got to know the children. They got to understand what's making them tick. क्या उनकी interest है? अगर cricket में interest है, so then find books that are interesting about cricket and read from that. Like, don't try to force feed things to children just because you think that this is don't be the gatekeeper here. And you might have to try many different stories before you realize that, there was this one child who in kindergarten who would there was this one book that I had read, which was, I don't know how many of the others liked it, but he just loved it. And no matter which story I read, he would pick up that book and he would say, please read this to me. But little children love repetition. They can't hold on to one story and they want you to read and reread it many times. But with older kids who have developed a distaste for literature or reading, again, don't make it a chore. Don't make it, abhi baithna padega tumhe, you have to listen to me and you choose the book. You know, build that relationship with the child where you really get to know what their interests are. And then you could say, the other day, it's really strange. I found this book in the library that had, that was about this child who wanted to be a scientist, just like you. Do you want me to read that book to you? You'll see the change gradually. You'll see non-readers wanting to read. I promise you this.
Yeah. So I think
Great. So, thank you so much, Nita, for this wonderful session. And thank you for filling in the feedback form. All those who have filled in the feedback form, we will be sending the certificates by Monday, latest Tuesday morning. And we will touch base with you for the workshop series. So thank you so much for a lovely Saturday evening, Nita. It was lovely listening to you. And we look forward to having all of you in our sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you all
wonderful
for
evening. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you for your participation and for so many of you turning up on a Saturday evening. I'm really, I thought there'll be like 10 people.
No, Nita. We are 100. And lots of them were logged on our YouTube because we can not admit more than 100.
Wow.
Yeah. So lovely. All
Yeah,
right. Have a
thank
pleasant
you,
evening,
everyone.
everyone. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you,
Mahesh.
Vivekji, Jayashri.
Yeah.
For a very small time, I was a part of Adhyayan team. I joined
Yeah, I
for
know that.